Alright, so I've already gone over these topics on the Shielder channel, but they were on the Japanese channel, albeit with English subtitles, but I figure it wouldn't hurt to go over them again, since I do go over them in my seminars. It's always better to get it to feel these things, but let's take a look at some agete and sagete with these concepts. So Nick can join in. So first up, why the agete sagete? Right? Agete just means raise hands. It's like I'm going high, right? The other one, sagete, here it's like here, I go by, like this. Okay, so Nick's just being neutral, resisting but not resisting, and by that I mean if I provide an input to his brain that he recognizes, like this, you know, here, then like I will get jammed. If I give a semi-correct input where I kind of do something like, I don't know, like this here and then here, like this, he'll take it. There's other ways to jam this, but for the purposes of demo, just to make things simple. Okay, he's taking taking uke, so to speak. All right, so that being said, the reason that we choose these is because we want to feel how we can affect our partner. It has nothing to do with being an actual technique. If I raise this with force, he's able to respond. If I do a certain thing, which I'll elaborate on in a minute, if I'm here, how do I feel, Nick? Like if I'm just like this and I raise with force.
Yeah, you can feel tight.
Yeah, I feel tight, I get tight in the shoulders. Now I'm going to cue something different. What happens at the point of contact now?
Yeah, this is lighter.
Yeah, okay, so it's lighter because I've done this thing which I call an NTH, or neck, tailbone, heel. Now because I'm lighter, it's easier for me to raise neck. The way I cue this is, if I'm here on the floor and Nick is here on the floor, and I'm here, it's really hard for me to raise like this. On the other hand, if I were to get a stick and place it at the nape of my neck, and it's like I balance my tailbone here, I don't feel stable anymore. Right here. Nick, how does this feel?
Yeah, it feels light.
Light, right? So light means it's then, because this pressure is decreased, it's easier for me then to make an adjustment to then just raise Nick up like this. Okay. Same thing applies if he's here. I have to add one detail. In this case, let's say if I come down here, Nick can block me. If I create this NTHQ, where I'm kind of unstable, like this, then it's very easy for me to then bring my elbows forward just a little bit to destabilize Nick's structure, but I don't change the point of contact, and then from here, you just bring the person down. So that's one way to align your posture. Now what's another way? Well, that NTHQ is kind of the doorway to something that my buddy Alex likes to call centerline and precarious balance. These things, traditional Japanese geta, have a really cool effect in that they provide this uplift. They kind of clean up your centerline and this feeling of precarious balance. You can see right here, I can't really stay still. In fact, I have to constantly shift from axis to axis. But what that does is, now Nick grabs me here, and I make an adjustment here to get my center line. Nick, how does this feel?
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, so I can't fight against Nick because I have no base really to fight him with. I have to align to these geta basically, which means I can also raise and then lower like this. This is a cheat, by the way. But likewise, you'd think that because Nick is, well, way shorter than me now because of this, you'd think that Nick's center of gravity is much lower. But in fact, if I make a Q, whereby I don't have it on right now, but if I kind of do this, now my center line is more aligned to his, and something kind of curious happens. Where do I feel Nick?
You feel under.
Yeah, so now I'm technically under him, even though I'm taller than him. Well, taller, even taller. So this makes it really easy for me to just float him up like this and do this kind of thing. I have his balance, and something interesting and he's being just neutral in this case. If I have this, you have this kind of like weird effect where people start to stick to you here, like this. To compound this, we have a lot of tricks with the hands that connect the hands to here. They're nothing special. If you use chopsticks, you do the same thing. You can use silicon eggs, you can use, well, if you've been trained properly to hold a sword, same thing happens. Okay, so let's take a look at the compound effect now. If I grab Nick like this, Nick, if I try and move you, just resist. Okay, so this is easy for Nick to resist basically. Why is it? If I grab Nick with what we call monkey grip, say in grappling here, it's really easy for me to move Nick, okay? But it's easy also for Nick to just pull this out, yeah, okay? But it's easier for me to move Nick around. Now, the reason that is I've covered actually in another video with Bjorn, but there's a guy, Okamoto Makoto, did a really good video on this, but you're using the palm fascial system. And when you have, so if Nick pushes like this, one direction, like one vector force, actually let's make it palm to palm. One direction, one vector force, like this, here to here, or here to here you can resist. But if I add this, suddenly it's hard for him to resist. Try this at home, it's really weird, okay? Your brain cannot process more than one direction of force at a time. If you simply add this to the equation, his brain just goes bork. And you can take advantage of that simply by, well, you can use what we call Weck Fist. I'll put a link. David Weck came up with this. So if I use a normal fist, and I just try and I make a relatively good posture, maybe even use an NTHQ, not the centerline Q that I just did. It's a little complicated. So I use an NTHQ like this, and I use this fist. See how like I get up to here, but now I get jammed. But if I use the Weck Fist here and here, notice what happens. It's harder for him to get a cue on where this is going. Now, there is a vector that's involved that naturally happens because of this, but I can also start accessing the inside of my palm here and just kind of follow that till it just kind of like bypasses his shoulder basically here. There we go. This, and then just like this. Looks really fake, but all I'm doing is I'm cueing this palm fascial thing, exhibiting multiple directions, and then at the same time I'm just monitoring my alignment, making sure that it doesn't break, and I do this. Okay, so if we have that, we can do some really interesting things. If you understand how to cue your fists using those things, which I cover in my seminars, you can do a lot of funky stuff. Like I could just use a Weck Fist like this in that Sagete. And from here, so Nick, this versus this. It's a weird feel. You have to feel it. It's a completely different proprioception. It's easier for me to actually destabilize Nick up just slightly from here and then from here down like this. Okay? Or likewise, I could use fists using that so-called Weck Fist, and I just kind of like squeeze into my palms, and then from here, it's easy for me to get him here. Now, this is not kuzushi. This is not actually taking his balance. It's just better, it's easier for me to connect to my core, and actually, it turns out, boxers use this same kind of connection in their gloves. When they block, they grip inside of the gloves and they access the same system. The Russians actually use a cue where they crush a water bottle in order to set the same cue. So, just some ideas you can try with chopsticks, actually. Like if you have chopsticks at home, you just grip those chopsticks. Here you get, I give a frontline cue that some people might know, where I take most of my support down the front line of the fascial line, then I add chopsticks, and I cue these chopsticks to go down first before initiating the movement. Same thing. If I'm actually holding chopsticks, if you hold chopsticks, it works even better. You can move this down once, and then you come up like this, and the person, they stay relatively locked to you. The idea is that you don't want to break this grip. If I simply drive upwards like this, that's one force, one vector. It doesn't work. As soon as I grip like this into chopsticks, it's harder for his brain to recognize what's going on. Okay? So, alignment, then there's the additives. It's not the only one. It's a bunch of them I cover in my seminars. I wouldn't call this Aiki per se, but it is an entryway into kind of understanding better ways of using the body. It will improve your strikes, actually. I'm going to hit Nick lightly. If I just use a fist, like this, versus if I use the Weck Fist like this, like that, there's a different sound. Okay? And usually, at least my thesis, is that the reason this works so much better is you got proper bone connection because it kind of engages the forearm here, but leaves everything else loose. In fact, you can test this by simply making a fist, going like this, checking your range of movement, your core engagement, making that Weck Fist, and going like this. You could do the same with the chopstick. Actually, if you hold a chopstick, go like this, versus making a fist, you might feel some kind of difference here in the shoulder. Okay, so just some food for thought.